Hello, this is State Representative Robert Martwick, and we're here in my office in Springfield, Illinois. It's Friday, April 7th, and we've just finished a week in session, and I thought it was time for a little bit of a legislative update, let you know what's going on here in Springfield, and hopefully give you a little information that will encourage you to get involved, take a stand, try and help guide this process, because we need it down here. All right, so let's get to it, right? Let's talk about what happened this week. And I think the most important thing is we should always start anytime we're talking about this as a budget. And the answer is no, we don't have one still. Since the governor took office in January of 2015, since that time, no budget. And so as we continue to try and allow the state to function until we're able to get a budget, we have done a number of things. And trust me when I say this, none of these are the way we should be going about it. We should be putting in place a full budget. You know, I've heard a lot of blame about who's to blame for this budget. Of course, I maintain that this begins and ends with the governor. On day one in 2015, we went to the governor and said, Governor, we will compromise with you. You don't want to raise taxes. We understand that. We've seen over a decade of cuts to social services and education and university. We don't want any more cuts. But here's what we'll do. We'll compromise. We will do some tax increases, which you don't want to do. We'll do some more budget cuts, which we don't want to do. And together we will solve this problem. And he said, no, not unless I get my turnaround agenda. And we've been stuck in this place ever since. So, as we've been doing this, there's been a lot of damage, a lot of harm, and we try to keep the money moving, right? We try to keep the money moving. So many social service agencies, especially in my neighborhood, have really suffered because of this. I think about places like Sunshine Activity Center, which provides respite care for adults with profound developmental disabilities, just crushing under the weight of this budget impasse because they're not getting the funding they need to support the services they provide. And it's a wonderful place. So we did do something in the meantime. We passed what's called a lifeline budget, $800 million, okay? Now this lifeline budget is, people say, well, if you don't have a budget, how can you do a part of it? Well, the process is rather complicated. Even though we don't have a budget, there are certain things that continue to get funded by court order, and money continues to come in and money continues to go out. One of the things that happens is, as some of the tax money comes in, it gets deposited into specific accounts that are only can be used for specific reasons. Education and human services have two of these little pools of money. And this money has accumulated to $800 million sitting in a bank account. And what we said was, it can only be spent on certain purposes. Let's spend that money on those purposes instead of having it sit in an account. We can continue to fight about social services, or excuse me, about a budget, but critical social services need to get funded. What am I talking about? Meals on Wheels, which provides one nutritious meal to homebound senior citizens per day. This is critical. It saves the state tons of money. By having people go to a senior citizen's home, you have a daily check on them to make sure that they are okay. You're providing them with a meal that allows them to stay in home, live out their senior years in dignity, and not be forced into a nursing home where ultimately the bill, if they don't have the money to cover it, comes back to us. And when I say us, I mean me and you, the taxpayer, right? So this is a program that saves us money in the long run, and we are not funding it because of this budget impasse. Today, or this week, we passed this that will get money to Meals on Wheels and help keep that program running. Domestic violence shelters that and services that provide services and counseling and assistance to victims of domestic violence. Again, this is a program that got cut. We're going to get money to that. Again, programs for to help people with developmental disabilities. Breast and cervical cancer screenings for people on Medicaid. This is so important. Again, think about this. Breast and cervical cancer screenings. We all know that if we can catch breast and cervical cancer early, it can be treated. If we catch it late, it is a travesty. And the cost to the state for people on Medicaid is going to balloon and be way bigger than if we just provide the preventative treatment that we can. Again, these are smart things. Spend money, save money. Finally, we're going to get some money, much needed money, to state and college universities, which the governor has proposed cutting by as much as 60%. And we've been on this slow starve because of the budget impasse. We're going to get some money to state colleges and universities and community colleges to help them keep floating. There have been stories of state universities firing as much as 25% of their staff. Again, these are economic generators. One of the best economic generators in the state are the state university system. Brings kids into our state, they learn, they go on and they have jobs and careers here in Illinois, they add to our workforce. This is an economic generator. We should not be cutting them off. So this is what we passed, a lifeline budget. Far from what we need to get done. We got to get the whole thing done like we can get done, like has been done every single year in the state since its inception until this governor took office. So hopefully he's going to come around, wake up, and see that we shouldn't be doing this piecemeal. It's time to sit down and do a budget. But until that time, we'll keep trying to find answers. Next thing that I want to talk to you about is a property tax relief, not a freeze. And notice the freeze is in quotes. The governor likes to talk much about a property tax freeze. This is the most ham-handed approach to helping people with high property taxes, and it's a horrible, horrible idea. Everybody likes it because it sounds good. Going to freeze your property taxes. Guess what? It doesn't freeze your property taxes. All it does is it freezes the ability that local government can levy, meaning how much they can collect. But if things change in your neighborhood, if values go up, if businesses close or people leave homes and stuff like that, your property tax bill can still go up. Your property tax bill still will go up. But since the government is frozen by how much it can collect, then if you have a local government that's running very close to the belt, then the only way they can get around this freeze is by by cutting essential services. What do I mean in local government? Well, maybe they fire a couple of police officers, and then when your house is being broken into, it takes them longer to get there. Or maybe at your local school, they have to fire a few teachers, and then we have children sitting in classrooms not getting instruction. It makes no sense. We have local control over this stuff, we should do it, but we did pass a measure that will provide property tax relief. Imagine that. Not a fake freeze, but real relief. What this is a package of exemptions. Many of you know if you own your own home, you get a property tax exemption, a homestead exemption. So we've raised some of the exemptions, and so that people will get more relief from their bill. Homeowners, senior citizens, veterans, people living with disabilities will be entitled to slightly higher exemptions, which will lower their tax bills. Property tax relief, not a fake freeze. So that was a good thing that we did today. That passed the House. It'll go to the Senate. These are the two big things I want to talk about what got done this week, right? There were loads and loads of bills. Lots of stuff passed the House and many things, but these are probably the two biggest ones. Now, when we get back, there are still things to work on. So I want to talk to you about two more things. Elected school board and life insurance benefits, those are my two big initiatives. So I've been working very hard on the elected school board for the last 2 years. It's a very difficult process, but thankfully I have the support of so many wonderful organizations like Raise Your Hand and Parents for Teachers and the Brighton Park Neighborhood Council and the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. So many groups that are, and there are so many others, that grassroots coalition that are working on that elected school board issue. So we've got a bill that's ready to pass here in the House. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to put together a bill that we know we can get through both chambers and get to the governor's desk. Senator Kwame Raoul will be carrying this bill once it leaves the House in the Senate. So I'm working collaboratively with him, trying to find a solution that we know we can get through the legislature, put it on the governor's desk, and put some pressure on him to finally give the citizens and the taxpayers of Chicago what they deserve, what they've wanted for a long time, a elected representative school board, where people will have the opportunity to weigh in through elections on how Chicago public schools are run and how the money is spent. The last thing I want to talk to you about is Life Insurance Benefits Act, Unclaimed Life Insurance Benefits Act. This is an initiative of our state treasurer, Michael Frerichs. It's something I've been working on with him for the last 2 years. So last year we passed a bill that would affect this going forward. This bill will go retroactively. I know you're wondering, what am I talking about? Well, crazy thing, in Illinois, 4 years, insurance companies were under no obligation to pay benefits or proceeds of a life insurance policy to the beneficiary when the policyholder died. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't do it, right? In many instances they did, but there were certain bad actors out there who, even though they had knowledge that a policyholder had died, they said, well, unless the beneficiary comes forward and claims this, I don't have to pay him and I'm not going to. And they would hold that money for 50 years, collect loads of interest on it, and then finally turn over only the face value. They don't have to turn over the interest. They get to keep that. Only the face value of the policy, right? And so an example, a $50,000 policy held for 50 years will produce well over $1 million of interest. But when the 50 years is up, they just hand $50,000 to the treasurer, and then the treasurer goes and looks for the beneficiaries or anyone who might be entitled to that money, as you might be aware of with that iCash, right? iCash.com. Well, this bill would require insurance companies to go back, check their records, and see, they would have to look at these lapsed policies they have. If they find that one of these policyholders was dead when the policy was qualified as lapsed, then they have to go through good faith efforts from 1996 to 2017, find those people, get those monies to them. This is something that government is supposed to do, right? When you buy a life insurance policy, you think that when you die, that your children and your loved ones are going to be taken care of. And unfortunately, that hasn't been the law. And because it hasn't been the law, the insurance companies, acting well within their rights, withheld that money that was so needed at that point. And it's just the wrong thing to do. We have a chance to clean this. We can pass a law that will require them to go back, find that money, get it to the people that deserve it. It might even be you. Happy to work with the treasurer on this initiative. I expect this bill to be called the week we get back, and we'll proceed on that and get that to the governor's desk as well. So that's it. That's my legislative update for this week. Stick around. Stay tuned. If you've seen some of my other things behind the scenes with State Representative Martwick, where I take you through some of these things that you wouldn't normally see in your daily life. You don't get to read about them on the news. It's a little back room look at what goes on here in Springfield. I've got a blockbuster coming up for you in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned and look for that. I think you'll find it very interesting. And then we'll also be continuing with our session, our series called Straight Talk Common Sense Solutions, where I debunk some common myths. Right now, certain people are promoting an agenda like property tax freeze, which is nonsense. It doesn't help you. It only hurts you. And I'll tell you why, right? That'll be one coming up. If you look on my videos, you'll find one about term limits, where I talk about how term limits, sounds like a great idea, but it might not be. I'm always happy to hear disagreement, so write me. I'll debate you about the issue. I'll talk to you about the issue. I'll give you as much information as I've got. Maybe you'll come to my way of thinking. Maybe you won't. That's okay. In democracy, we get to have differences of opinion. That's what makes this system so great. So thanks again for watching. Stay tuned, and see you again soon.